We are recording. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. Well, welcome to our first book club, everyone.
Okay.
3 of us. Elly, do you want to introduce the book?
Ladies and gentlemen, wait. Based on our appearances, can you guess what book that we
Make
read?
a guess first.
Drum roll.
Woo!
By William Goldman. Woo!
Yeah.
And your thoughts about it?
Okay, well, I think we should start with the beginning because we were all very confused.
So, like, what was that? Was I in a fever dream, or was that actually part of the book?
We all researched whether we were reading the right copy because we genuinely thought we were reading something different.
It's interesting having it that way, to having an adaptation. It did not work. Sorry.
We had his random rant at the beginning where he told us about his family, but then which I didn't honestly care about, but then because we have the special edition, we also had an extra rant at the beginning of the beginning. And I was like,
we had an introduction to the book, and then we had a prologue.
Yeah,
what it's called. That was really dumb.
And then he does the same little rant at the end. And I honestly was skim reading by that point because I did not care.
And so the first introduction, that's a fully factual thing that where Goldberg is it Goldberg? Goldman?
Yes.
Goldman is talking about his experience kind of post the writing of it, where he's talking about the film and how it's changed his life and blah blah blah. And then our prologue is a semi-autobiographical, what was that word? Semi-autobiographical version of before he wrote the book and why it was important to him. And it served no purpose. That's what annoyed me. It, instead of making our narrator being someone that we trust and whose opinions matter throughout his interjections throughout the course of the book, it just made me dislike him.
Right? I didn't care about him. I was like, go away.
And stop cheating on your wife. You're a horrible person.
It did get to the point where I did actually end up skipping past those bits. And honestly, after I did that, it became a much better book.
I was like, you keep going on about your son's weight, and I just, was that necessary?
It's not necessary. And I kept on saying to Bethany as I was reading, I was like, look, I've skipped past all of these because his interruptions in the story aren't funny. They're jarring to the story themselves and just completely unnecessary. It felt like there are sections there where he's the one that really, really annoyed me was the whole, hang on, am I allowed to skip past and continue on other parts of the book? It was when he started talking about Leslie's and Buttercup's reunion, he just interjects right in the middle of that. And he's like, oh, my wife didn't actually, was that supposed to be Morgenstern?
Well, that was Morgenstern. He was playing off Morgenstern because Morgenstern interrupted first, but then he added 2 more pages where he was just bickering with his publishers.
But that makes no sense. He's literally just arguing with fictional people.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, but not the point.
I would have preferred if there was a copy without his interjections, and then if you wanted to know why he abridged it the way he did, you can then read one with interjections. At first I was like, this is interesting, but then I actually just want to read the story. I don't care what you've done to it at this point. I want to just read it.
I think in general, I actually really enjoyed the book. I actually really did. But only without those parts. It took a long time for me to get into it.
The last 100 pages.
I did it.
No, Bethany didn't. She made it very clear. I was like, it's actually a pretty alright book, and she's like, no, it's not.
If I hadn't seen the movie and like enjoyed the movie before reading this, I would have given up because it was so boring.
Well, I think I don't know. Maybe it was because I loved. The action scenes definitely had something to, you know, there was something missing there, certainly. But honestly, I loved, and you can disagree with me, I actually did like the little interjections talking about actual characters and what their stories were. I liked that.
I liked the backstories to a point. Like, I like knowing more about Inigo and Fezzik and stuff, but I did start, Morgenstern just really writes for ages.
That's the thing that I'm trying to understand, and I cannot fathom, like, why did he write it this way? Because this is a fictional retelling of a fictional story. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, it's all made up. So he could have just told the story of the Princess Bride as is and tried to play up the kind of satirical version of a fairy tale thing, like going through all of those tropes without the interjections, and it would have been better.
Like,
I feel it would have been better.
Yeah, like he did the
But
movie.
then I'm trying to
The
figure
movie
out.
script is so good, but then this random book version is like a mess.
Well, I looked into it because I thought that the movie is literally taken word for word from the book, and I wondered why. And it's because William Goldman actually did do the screenplay for it.
Yeah,
and I didn't know that.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, how is the script so good, and yet this book is so long?
I think also, well, first of all, I think it's a very visual story. I think we can agree it is a very visual story. There are lots of things that happen that are supposed to be seen, and that's why it gets a little bit slow in terms of the description. But that's why it works better as a movie. And also, the interjections in the movie are once again satirizing the whole story time, fairy tale, reading from a book, old Disney movie sort of thing. Whereas with this one, it's just
his opinions.
Yeah, of his own book.
And he's like, I didn't like all the history. It was so boring, so I cut it. But he writes
the opinion of the book.
My opinion of that book.
Okay, he says stuff like, okay, the original one has like 72 pages of the Queen packing, so I got rid of it. And I'm like, cool, that makes sense. You didn't have to tell me that with 3 pages of writing. You could have just, I don't know, put a footnote and put it at the end of the book if I was really interested.
Yeah.
It's weird though, because like it felt like really lazy writing. Because it's like, oh, this happened, but then he spends 50 pages explaining it.
Yes, thank you. He's like, I got rid of this because it went on for too long. And I'm like, you're going on for too long, so you're not fixing anything.
And it just makes me wonder, because the book was popular before the movie was made, and then obviously people read the book because of the movie. But I'm trying to understand why people liked the book before the movie was made.
Yeah.
I just don't understand it, because the interjections are so disruptive, and there's 2 levels of it that are going on. There's the level of, here's my explanation of why I made this choice, and then there's also like, I'm going to talk about my wife for a second and get my feelings out about her, or my obese son, or my publishers, or it just didn't make any sense, and it really bothered me. It was so, like, what the film does successfully is it, in those moments where you get taken out of the story of Buttercup and Wesley and taken back into the world of the grandfather and the grandson, it's a uniform world that we've built and we understand where we're going, whereas Goldman just, it's just like his tangential thoughts.
I think the problem I had was that in the movie you get taken out because you're like, okay, it's a child, he wants to know more. But in this one, it seems more arrogant in the book, because he's like, no, I want to state what I think here and now. And then he's like,
About his own book.
yeah, he's like, skip if you will, but I'm like, you've already disrupted me, so I might as well read part of it. I mean, Elly, you tried to skip them, yeah? And
I did.
And, yeah.
I just, well, because like I said, they have absolutely no substance to the story whatsoever. So I just skipped them, and it proceeded to be a much better book because, and it like you said, you know, you have disrupted us anyway, so you have disrupted the story, but it's good that the ones in italics where he actually does go on those tangents, that's a little bit easier to skip, but it's the ones in parentheses that once again are supposed to be Morgenstern that annoy me. Some of them I read, some of them I didn't, but
at the beginning it made me laugh, those parentheses that like Morgenstern did, because I'm like, okay, that's like kind of giving me Douglas Adams vibes, where he keeps like backtracking and being like, oh no, it counts. But then because it's such a long book, you get to a point where you're like, I don't need to know. I think I gathered when things are invented and when things aren't by this point. It's fine.
Yeah. I mean, also it's a fantasy novel. It's a fantasy novel. You don't need to tell me when jeans were invented.
Right. He's like, I swear, things were invented at this point. And I'm like, it's your own world. Do what you will.
There's literal magic in it. So. You look like you want to say something.
I was going to talk about, so through the process of reading an extended book, there is a break of chapters or parts or things like that happen to make you know, it easier to kind of track your progress and pick up, you know, from where you've left off, depending on how long you're reading it. Now, I read this very quickly. I read this in 2 days. But so each part is about kind of 50 pages, maybe a bit less, like 30 pages long, except for part 4, which is 200 pages long. Why? Like, I don't understand. Like, we get the backstories of Inigo. I can't even remember the characters. Is this Ezek and Vizzini? That's the one. So we get the backstory of those characters, which is fine. Like, we get that. But the interesting part of those stories comes from, like, the actual narrative that's going between myself, the Dread Pirate Roberts, and these guys. So, like, and it's one of the most memorable parts of the, like, obviously there's a big comparison part to the film because it is such a beloved film for so many people across so many generations. And, like, you killed my father, prepare to die. That is the most iconic line from the movie that occurs in this part. It was too long.
It was I felt like the backstories, I only read them because I knew that I was going to continue the battle if I made it to the other side, and that was the only thing that pulled me through. If I didn't know that I was going to get like another encounter with Wesley, with another person, I would just be like, where's this going?
I vaguely disagree because I mean, loving the movie. I've loved the movie for a long time. I watched it when I was like 10 or something like that. But I've watched the movie, and I think, like a lot of people, Fezzik and Inigo were always my favorite characters because they were that sense of purity in just this ridiculous world. So I actually loved reading about their backstories and hearing why they are the way they are, specifically Inigo's, dare I say. Because
I do agree. Inigo's backstory was very cool. I did like that.
And it gave a lot of weight to why he's so determined to kill this six-figured man.
Interesting. Like, I enjoyed reading them because, again, I like the characters and I want to know more, but it's just the writing went on for so long. I felt like it could have been trimmed back.
And I think that's a testament to the creation of those characters in particular. You know, the Inigo and Fezzik are probably the most, I would say they're universally the most loved characters from the story. And there's a reason for that, because they're a little bit more complex than most of the other characters in this book. Whereas your actual lead characters, Buttercup and Wesley, they're so boring. And like,
There's so much more sarcastic.
Talk about the sexism in this book that was so not okay. It was so not okay, and for me,
do you want to give an example?
Let her take the stage.
So the whole time in this book, or at least at the start, we're introduced to Buttercup, and she's she's not like all the other girls. She likes horse riding, and she's not into boys. She likes the farm, and cool. She's not like those other girls. But then she goes through puberty and becomes the most attractive girl in all the land, and so all the girls hate her and all the boys want to be with her, and she basically loses her I'm not like the other girlishness and just becomes like an object. Well, she doesn't have personality. And then it's brought up again like 2/3 of the way through the book. I'm trying to remember. I didn't mark the page out. Which character is it? The prince who says it, and he's basically like, women are just decorative objects for us to marry and carry our babies. And I'm like, this is not okay.
I specifically remember when Bethany got up to that point. It was very
I actually had a rant in person. Because it's not okay. She's the only female character in this book, and to resort her to just a damsel in distress is...
Not to mention the titular character.
Yeah, literally. I'm so upset because how like, I get that this is a product of its time, and I'm reading it as someone who, how many years later, like 30, 40 years later after it was originally published. Anyway, we can find that out later. It wasn't okay, and it made me dislike her character even more. And so I've already said I didn't like this book. I have so many problems with how it was written and the characters, and I don't feel like it's clever like it's trying to be. But one of the key things is that the only female character that we've got in the entire novel is resorted to just a baby machine.
That was one of the things that I did pick up with, because like I do feel like Wesley's and Buttercup's relationship was lackluster at best, not fleshed out. It was when it first happened, it was like, oh, sure, I'm actually in love with you, and Wesley's like, oh my gosh, I'm in love with you too. What a coincidence! But then when they have their reunion, and he's like, oh my gosh, you're even more beautiful than the last time I saw you, and she's like, yeah, but there's more to me than just beauty. And he goes, yes. Off we go. He doesn't mention anything. He doesn't do anything. It's just her only character trait is, yeah, she's alright, I guess.
Also, another thing that annoys me about her character is she will stand up for herself with the prince and with other people around. But as soon as Wesley comes into the scene, she's like, I can't do it. I can't tie the rope because I'm a girl and you a man. Do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you just stood up to the prince 5 minutes ago. What are you doing?
And then if we go into, did your copy have the...
Mine's
the same copy.
It is exactly.
Yeah, okay, so it's the same one. So right at the end of, once the story is completed, we get a sneak peek into the sequel, which I did some research, is actually due to be released in 2021.
Okay.
So there is actually a sequel to this book.
When I just need to interject real quick. When it came to the end of the book and then he kept talking, I almost I was like, stop talking. I just made it through the story. Let me leave. And then I checked the page count and there was still like 90 pages to go. And I was like, what do you have left to say?
Yeah.
Anyways, keep going.
That's the benefits of not reading the bits where he just prattles on about everything. So
by that point, I was skim reading so hard. I was like, if there's anything important, I'll stop and go back. But that's the part maybe the maddest.
Maybe that's because, maybe it's just why I liked the book, is because I didn't let myself get tied down by that. Because I kind of feel like for you guys, that's the worst part of the book for you, the actual bit that's not the story. But for me, I'm like, no, this is the story. I like the story. I actually do like the story. The characters are weak, sure, specifically Buttercup and Wesley, but it's fun. It's just a bit of fun. That's how I see it.
The cliff face is fun as always, and like anything past like once he's in the well, I guess the death zoo or whatever they call it in the book, the pit of despair, I like to call it. When he anything past that, I really enjoy, because it's like it picks up pace and it gets interesting. And I was really excited that the Mowage speech was in the book.
Yeah, that was kind of fun to read, to be like, that was intended.
Because like you read it in the voice.
But that's why it works better as a film and not as a book, because you have to hear it in the voice. And like, as I got to the introduction of Vizzini especially, I was like, he is perfect. He's perfectly cast. I can only hear his lines in his voice. Like, it works so well as a film. Like, just here and now, film is better than the book.
Yeah,
Here and
that's
now.
why I was so surprised when I did research and found out he did write the script. Because I was like, you had full creative freedom with the film, or you just decided to do two very different things.
I think he, like, it, I don't know why, but I have the impression that he was like, I really love this book. I am so, like, this is the best book that has ever been written.
Really?
We all read the book.
How did you get that mood? I don't know where you read that anywhere. It's just...
No, but it's from when you said it.
I do not get that vibe, though. But, like, you can get that from the book, and he loved his book so much that he's just like, oh, this is already going to be a movie. And so he wrote the script straight away.
Mhm.
And so then he sold the script, and they were like, this is great. Sure, we'll get money out of it. And they did get money out of it. So
Also, I like how when it came to the Buttercup and Wesley reunion, and he was like, they wouldn't let me write it, so write in and you'll get a copy. And I was like, that's a nice idea. But then I get to the end and I read, and he's like, yeah, it's not a thing yet. And I was like, what are you talking about?
I know. That actually did fill me with some excitement. I was like, is there going to be like a website we can go to,
Yeah.
or like some sort of interactive? I thought that was quite, like, it was really clever that fans could then go and do deeper research if they wanted to. But
he
no.
lied? Or he just keeps being like, it's happening. And I'm like, it's been so many years. Is it happening? At some point, you have to just say that you're not going to write it at all.
That's it. And so then if we come back to what I was trying to say about the
Yeah, sorry.
where it just like obliterates the entire story. So like the only female character that we have is killed off in childbirth, of all things. Like, it frustrates me so much. This book frustrates me to no end, because I don't feel like it doesn't service its characters, it doesn't service us as the audience, and it's just not clever. Like,
It honestly just feels like he's just fueling his own childhood with like all his annotations and being like, when I got to this part, and I'm like, I don't care how you reacted, because I'm reading it right now. So
it feels like reading it feels like it's something that it feels like something that I've written, but it's my first draft where there are scenes that I don't actually know how to write, so I've left a placeholder and then left it there. And then he forgot about those placeholders and then sent them in. And they were like, this is a good enough book.
And he's like, no.
It does feel unedited. And I was talking to Bethany about
That's what I thought.
There's a particular scene right after the write-in bit where he starts talking about their reunion, and he starts a parentheses, like the description parentheses, and then never finishes it. There's no ending to it.
It felt like, honestly, every time I read it, I was like, this scene could be cut. This scene could be trimmed back. It felt like
Can we make the abridged version?
the new abridged version. But like, for all of its faults, where you got into the story of the Princess Bride, and it was just doing its job telling the story, it was an enjoyable experience to read. It was just few and far between. I think there was twice I experienced that in my binge of reading it.
I remember I specifically enjoyed the ride from kidnapping all the way to like when he starts ranting about the reunion scene, because like everyone enjoys the cliff face and all that. And then the pit of despair, that's fine. I enjoyed Wesley's banter in there because it was just entertaining, but I also found that I was really enjoying myself post-wedding when action is happening and they're each, doing things. Like, okay, back to Veronica's character. She very confidently acts like a queen at the very end. And it felt very weird. I was like, where did this come from?
Yeah, it did. Where is it? I need to find it.
She doesn't understand women.
Not to mention, like, there's a weird transition period where it's like, oh, the Humperdinck was so busy and the wedding, and then she's like, oh, I'm a queen now? Cool, I'm a queen now. That's her entire transition. Just, whoops, that happened, I guess. Yeah, I can't find it. I really would have appreciated having post-it notes.
That is a lesson for us next time.
I tried to find my post-it notes, and then I couldn't find them, and then just gave up and thought, no, it's fine. Okay, I can't find it. I say, still looking for it.
What are you trying to find?
The bit where she becomes queen.
Like the wedding scene, or like just where the narration?
There is no wedding scene.
Well,
there is
wedding
wedding
scene.
But it's like,
in her dream.
Yeah, don't worry about it. I can't find it.
Okay.
It's literally just one line where she's like, oh, it's a queen now. Whoops.
One thing that I think what really separates the film from this is that the universe that this is set in is meant to be like a historical version of our world, whereas the film is like, no, this is a fairy tale. It is made up.
That's the biggest difference. The film doesn't take it nearly as seriously as the book does, and that's what makes it more fun.
Yeah,
because you don't, like, the book is trying to make you be like, all right, you have to pay attention to this, you have to pay attention to this, take note of this, it's very important. In the movie, it's like, we're fighting with swords now.
Yeah,
that's part of the satirical part of it, because the movie, I feel like the movie does take that satire. Bethany doesn't agree with me, she doesn't like the movie, but I actually do think that some of those satirical parts are actually really, really well done, because it's fun. It's supposed to be fun. It is a fun story. Don't make me look too deep into it. That's why I skipped all those parts. It becomes a much better book when you do it. Read it again. Seriously, read it again. Skip all those parts.
Maybe several months later.
So that's the thing, is like,
I was thinking like 3 years later.
Better when it's edited and cut down significantly. It is not a successful method of storytelling.
Here's your homework for the next book club. Take the book, cut it down, and see if you can make it better.
We come back with like shreds of paper.
Just one line from the book.
So like you go, Ash.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, he made a note that talking to someone who read it in the original language, they said that it actually makes it more satirical if you know the language and the humor of the language. And I guess it just doesn't translate very well at all to book form. Because when he made several notes where he talked to someone who had read it, and he'd be like, this part was hilarious, why'd you cut it out? And he was like, because it was 72 pages long of a queen packing. He was like, but that's the funny part. What were you gonna say?
Oh, I was gonna kind of draw it to an end, so that's fine. Like, we're kind of coming back to the same things that made it a jarring experience, and it was the way it was written, with these interjections from the author explaining his choices. like, you don't need to explain your choices, honey. But if we cut that out and just come down to the core story of Buttercup and Wesley and the adventures they go on with their pals, it's a fun read. It's a fun bit of escapism, and that's it.
Yeah, it's a good read. It's not a great read. It's
I
just a
enjoyed
good
it.
read.
I had fun. I wouldn't say that it's like top 10 perfect book, absolutely one of my favorites, like a lot of people say. Like, it's not a 10 out of 10, but it's fun. It's a solid 3 out of 5, I think.
I think if you're a hardcore fan of the film, this would be a really good experience to read and see the craft of what they've done to alter it to suit a film medium and actually make it better in a film medium. But if you're like me and you don't think the film's that great, don't waste your time reading it, because it's not a fun experience. Because I gave it a 2 out of 5.
Basically, we're saying just go watch the movie again.
Just watch the movie and dress up because it's fun.
Get the screenplay and
Yeah.
read that.
Read the screenplay. Yeah. Anything else?
Nothing else to add. Good.
Right, cool. Well, first book club done. And now we can work towards the next one.
Yeah. We'll let you know of soon.
Yeah.
When we decide.
Not like we haven't planned it in advance. Sure.
Don't worry about it. It's fine. Okay. Ta-ta.
Ta-ta. Thanks for joining.